Hello everyone and welcome to the final game of the GRENKE Chess Classic Finals. I wasn't planning on showing this game, but so many of you said that you really wanted to see it in the previous video, and upon further inspection I decided that it was well worthy of showing. So it's Richard Rapport facing Magnus Carlsen. Rapport lost the game 1. You've seen how Magnus won a very nice victory there, and now Rapport with the white pieces has to beat Magnus in order to force tiebreaks. Now it's a really cool game, you will enjoy it. Let's check it out. So Rapport with the white pieces opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5 by Magnus, knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, and the two knights defense, knight to f6. We have d3, nothing crazy, with knight to g5, even though knight to g5 would definitely fit Richard's style. This is Magnus he's playing, so he has to also, play good moves. d3, and not saying that knight to g5 is a bad move, but, well, you know what I mean. Bishop to c5, we have knight to c3, pawn to h6, and castles kingside. We have pawn to d6, knight to a4, challenging the bishop, bishop to b6, and a3. And so it is a known position. For example, Anish Giri castled here against Joran van Foreest in the Dutch Championship last year and won a very nice game. But here we have bishop to g4, very rare and has only been played in one game, where pawn to h3 was the continuation. But here we have pawn to c3, and it is now as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. Now that goes for classical and rapid games that were played over the board. The position has been reached online in quite a few games between fairly unknown players, where a lot of moves have happened here. There are over 100 games where this position has been played. But after Magnus's next move, queen to c8, this position now no longer exists even in online databases. So we could consider that move the new one, or this move the new one, whichever you prefer. I usually only take into consideration games played over the board in serious tournaments. If really strong players have played a game online, then I will include this game when mentioning the new position, in case you're wondering. But okay, queen to c8, we have knight captures on b6. It makes sense to eliminate this strong bishop, and your knight on a4 isn't really a star player. Knight captures on b6, a captures, of course, taking towards the center, opening up the rook, and bishop to b3. Preparing to shift the bishop over to c2 if needed, knight to e7, and now pawn to h3, asking what do you do with the bishop, bishop back to e6, and now bishop to a4 with check. And now Magnus just went back bishop to d7, and I think this is because Magnus is now not trying to win, he's just trying not to lose. Were he playing to win, he would probably find pawn to b5. It's a really funny move, but point is that if you capture the pawn, now comes pawn to c6, and after the bishop goes back, now comes the bishop captures on h3, and you can't really lose this with black. For example, captures, knight h2, you want to get the g4 square, but just pawn to h5, and like I said, you can never lose this position. Even if a queen trade is offered, you can just trade and you will have sufficient means to draw this game. But the problem is after b5, you can have something like bishop to c2, and then pawn to g5, again, looks like something you want to play with black. Usually when you will have a two knights defense in this d3 line, black will be the one attacking on the king side. Very often the king will remain in the center. But okay, Magnus goes back, bishop to d7, we have bishop to c2, and now knight to g6. We have knight to h2, and now Magnus just castles kingside, says, I don't want anything crazy here, a draw means a tournament victory for me, and Rapport is the one that will have to push. So pawn to f4, e captures, bishop captures, he even gives up the bishop pair, but look at this, knight captures, rook captures, and now Magnus goes queen to d8, pawn to d4. Now Rapport has an amazing central structure here. He can put a queen on d3, have some e5 threats, queen h7 could be coming, rook a to f1 is coming. Very hard to hold this with black. Imagine having a queen on d3, e5 play, you just take the knight and checkmate the black king. So Magnus has a lot to deal with here. He plays rook to a5 first. The rook will serve a nice purpose along the 5th rank. Now e5 isn't really an option, as you do have full control over that, and you will not be able to kick away the knight. So first you have to prepare it with queen here, sacrifice the pawn, sacrifice the exchange, and then go for checkmate, if such a thing is possible. And he goes queen to d3. Pawn to d5 by Magnus. Here, rook to e8 would be much better, but he played pawn to d5, probably expecting e5. And e5, if you play e5, then knight e4, and you've solved all of your problems here. Probably he was expecting maybe Rapport sacrifices the exchange, but not really a problem. You can hold this. But Rapport played e captures on d5. Now comes pawn to g6. The problem with capturing is that now rook captures just ends the game. There's no defense here. You cannot take the rook or you get checkmated. So Magnus forced to play g6, and now pawn to c4, just defending the d5 pawn. So this means Magnus gave up that pawn really for nothing, and now the rook on a5 isn't all that impressive. So he tries to make it a bit more impressive, plays pawn to b5, tries to ruin the Rapport center here. Rook 8 to f1, and now rook to a6. You have to add more defenders to the knight here. Also, the king will have to be used. And now queen to f3. Pawn to d6 is also very nice, but Rapport first wants to prepare it with queen to f3, even though this will allow the bishop to harass the queen with bishop to c6 later on. So king to g7, adding another defender to the knight, and now pawn to d6, cutting off the rook's defense of the knight. So now you can't take with the pawn, you have to capture with the rook. Now pawn to c5. We have bishop to c6, a nice in-between move before deciding where to put the rook. Queen to f2, and now rook to e6. And here, Richard plays bishop to b3, which is a very natural looking move because you attack the rook, force the rook to move, you will have even more pressure on that f7 pawn. But interestingly, knight to g4 just ends the game on the spot. But, you know, such is the case when you play Magnus. Often the strongest moves are not found against him. And the point is that you're just going to lose a piece here. There's no way you can defend that piece. If you capture, then rook captures on f7, and again, you get destroyed. So best you have is something like queen to e7. You give up the knight, then rook e2 attacks the queen. Queen g3, and now rook captures on g2. Okay, you will have to give up your queen, but after queen captures and bishop captures, you will just capture back, and now you have a knight, rook, and bishop for the queen, which is really too much material for the queen. This will now be winning for Richard. But he played bishop to b3. Something similar will happen in the game, only Richard will get a worse situation than what he could have gotten here. Pawn to g5 by Magnus. Now attacks the rook, rook to f5, and bishop to e4, saying, okay, you take my rook, I will take your rook. So bishop captures on e6, but now f captures on e6, attacks the rook, and also adds another defender to the knight here. So rook to e5, and now bishop to d3. Magnus just being very resourceful and very annoying here. Rook to d1, going after the bishop. Rook captures on e6 is the best move, of course, but you know, when Magnus allows it, it doesn't feel like it's the best move. So again, the Magnus effect in place. Rook to d1, we have knight to g4, attacking the queen, and this is the only way to play. But of course Magnus finds it. So now Rapport sacrifices the queen, knight captures on g4, rook captures on f2, and now knight captures on f2, and finally bishop to c4. So this is the situation you have now. Instead of having rook, knight, and bishop for the queen, now Richard has two rooks for the queen. But okay, still a very nice position for him. We have knight to g4 and bishop to b3. Attacks the rook, rook to d2, and now pawn to h5. Magnus even continues pushing here. Which maybe not the best course of action, as it is a Rapport who is playing for the win here. We have knight to f2, now bishop to d5, and here knight to e4. Better was pawn to h4. Point is that if you advance, then you lose the h5 pawn, and if you capture, then just knight comes to h3, you free up the h5 square for the knight, and then the knight gets into the attack. But okay, knight to e4, also very nice. However, Magnus does have the option of trading bishop for knight here, which he does. Bishop captures, rook captures, and now pawn to g4. And of course, Rapport's position is much better here, but both players are now down to 5 minutes on the clock, and it's not going to be easy playing this. We have h captures on g4, now queen to g5. Rook d to e2. Now, rook to f2 here is better, but again, this is a crazy position. Point is that after rook to f2, and let's say h captures on g4, you have rook f to f4. And this will be very, very hard to defend. With proper play, impossible even. So after queen g5, rook d to e2 was played, but now h captures on g4, pawn to g3, stopping pawn to g3 for Magnus, and now queen to f5. If the rook now moves, of course, you are planning to infiltrate. So rook to f4 attacks the queen, queen to d3, and now king to f2. Defending the pawn, defending this pawn, defending this pawn. and ready to capture on g4 with check. So queen to b3, rook captures on g4 with check. King to f7, now comes rook to f4 with check. King to g7, and now rook f to e4, going after the e6 pawn. Queen to d3, saying, okay, if you move, I'm going to take this pawn with check. So king to g2. We have pawn to c6, and now rook back to g4 check. King f7, rook to f2 with check, and now king to e7. And here, the black king is in a lot of trouble. With this pawn guarding the d6 square, for example, you double up rooks here, it's very easy to checkmate the black king. So here, rook to g7 with check, king to e8, and now rook g to f7. And now the threat is very simple. If you, let's say, capture the pawn, it's a matter of check, king e7, and rook 2 to f7 checkmate, with pawn covering the d6 square. But Magnus, resilient as he is, finds pawn to e5. And now if you just start checking the black king, if the black king gets over to the queen side, might not be so easy to checkmate him. So d captures on e5 and queen to d5 with check. We have king to h2, 3 minutes now for Richard and 1 minute for Magnus. Queen captures on c5 now. We have rook 7 to f5, now queen to e3, king to h3, and king to e7. Now, not so easy to reach that black king. Rook to f7 check, king to e8, rook to f8 check, king to e7, and now rook 2 to f7 with check. King to e6. Magnus is very happy to march his king over to the queen side. If he hides that king on, for example, b6, then, you know, you're never reaching the king. We have rook to f6 check, king to d5 now. Of course, not captures, and then rook e8 picks up the queen. So king to d5, and now rook to d8 with check. And here, king to c4. King to c5 here would be a bit ill-advised, because you can go rook d to f8, but king to c4 here is actually more safer. We have pawn to e6, starting to advance the passed pawn, even though it was better on the previous move when rook to d8 check was played. E6 then was winning by force. But again, a little time on the clock for both of them. Queen to e5, and now rook to f4 with check. King to b3, rook to d3 with check, and now king to c2. Interestingly, if you go king to a2, which looks like a very safe square, then pawn to b4, as usual, wins the game. This is covered, and now it's only a matter of rook f2 check, rook to d1 checkmate. So king to c2, much stronger, as it comes with an attack on the rook, and now rook d to f3. Rook f to f3 was much stronger, rook d to f3 was played, and now Magnus just captures the pawn on e6. With check, pawn to g4, and now king captures on b2. King to g2, now pawn to c5. And this is now already looking very scary. Magnus starts advancing his passed pawn, and this is guarded. This is guarded. Imagine this pawn on c3. You are very close to losing this game. So rook to g3, and now queen to d5 with check. c4 is strongest here, but you know, time works against Magnus as well. Queen to d5 with check. King to h2, and now queen to e5. We have rook to f2 with check, king to b1, and yes, this would lead to checkmate. However, the rook is pinned, so rook to f1 with check. Interestingly, I'm sure you guys are well aware of this, but g5 is the way to go. I'm just going to show it because it's a really fun line. g5, c4, you're going to play g6, c3, g7, and you realize there is nothing more to be done here. You can give a check, for example, king to g2, or even king to g1, and after c2, you can even take the pawn, but you can also just give a check, and after c1 queen, you can take it and then bring a queen into the game, and you're just up a full rook, and of course completely winning. So that was possible here, but Richard went for rook to f1 with check, king to c2, now rook to f2 with check, king to d1, and now he played king to h3. Again, g5 is still winning, but well, the nerves got the better of both of them. King to h3, now the position is a draw. King to e1, attacks the rook, rook to f5 attacks the queen, and now Magnus has to play either queen to e7 to hold the draw, or queen to d4, but Magnus does neither. He plays queen to e4, and the position is once again winning for Richard, but not an easy move to find. I will give you a couple of seconds to try to find the win for Rapport. Feel free to pause the video and win the game for Richard while I give you a couple of seconds. And also, yeah, some of you mentioned in the previous video, while you guys are thinking, I'm gonna just fix the board here. Yeah, it does seem that the board is cut off a little bit. Sorry about that. Sometimes they, you know, switch up something and then I don't realize it. There we go. All right, I will improve it properly for the next video, but this will do for now. Sorry about not realizing it sooner. Well, yeah, okay. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this very difficult maneuver, as Rapport was down to 10 seconds on the clock when he had to find this. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook f to f3. That's the move that wins. Only move. The threat, of course, is rook to e3 check to win the queen, and once you give a check or anything, doesn't really matter, king to g2, and you start advancing the pawn, now g5, and white will be, of course, much faster, as you cannot cross c3, rook will just capture, so you can block with the queen, but now it's time to checkmate the black king, and how you do it is by playing rook f1 check, king to e2, rook f2 check, only move is king to e1 or king to d1, doesn't really matter, and now rook to e3 check, king to d1, and now the final move, king to f1, you give up the g5 pawn for a nice rook to e1 checkmate. So that was in the position. However, after Magnus's queen to e4, Richard played rook to g1 check, and now it's a dead draw. King to e2 was played, and now a nice repetition. Rook to g2, king to e1, rook to g1 check, king to e2, rook to g2 check, king to e1, and rook to g1. And it was in this position that the game was a draw, as the position was repeated 3 times. Yeah, not all draws are created equal. This was an incredibly fighting draw. Rapport tried his very best to take down Magnus and force tiebreaks, but Magnus just held on. It's the Magnus effect in place. Rapport wins this position 100 times out of 100 times against anyone else, but not against Magnus. Things just go Magnus's way. It's just the way it is. He has his invincibility cloak on, and there's nothing you can do about it. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me just show you the standings. Sorry, not the standings. Let me just show you. Yeah, also, Tarja posted this on Twitter after this win. Interestingly, this is Magnus's 6th consecutive tournament win in a row. Starting with the Champions Chess Tour Final, the World Rapid Championship, the World Blitz Championship, Chessable Masters Freestyle Chess Go Challenge, and now the GRENKE Chess Classic. So even though he's not the World Classical Champion, Magnus wins every tournament he enters. So that's incredible for any sport. And also, let me just share this with you, as it's been a while since we've checked out the standings or the world rankings. Magnus and Fabiano still the only two 2800 players. Hikaru solid in 3rd place, ready for the candidates tournament. Nodirbek Abdusatrov in 4th place, ahead of world champion Ding Liren, Ding in 5th. Then we have Alireza Yanipomnishi. Arjun Erigaisi broke into the top 10. He is now in India #1 and also in the top 10, 27.57, incredible rating. Wesley Wei and then from 11 to 20, Vishwanathan Anand, Sergei Karyakin, Leinier Dominguez Perez, Pragnananda, Anish Giri Gukesh, Shahriar Mamedjarov, Parham Maksulu, Maxim Vashelagrav, and Jan Krzysztof Duda, with, as you can see, Richard Rapport not being in the top 20. I think he's world number 26 or something. But definitely a player we would love to see in the candidates tournament. Is just that now there are so many great players that we would love to see in the candidates tournament. It's just that there are only eight places. And yeah, I will talk a little bit more about the candidates tournament, especially since tomorrow we have the first round of the candidates tournament. If you have any questions regarding the candidates tournament that you cannot find yourself by easily browsing the internet, feel free to ask them in this video, and I will reply to them in the next one before I start the analysis of the first game. And these are the games that will be played. So the open section and the women's section. In the open section, we will have Fabiano Caruana versus Hikaru Nakamura, a brutal matchup for classical chess. I mean, one that could easily decide the outcome of the candidates tournament. Nijat Abaso will face last year's winner, Yanni Pomnishi. Alireza versus Pragnananda. I'm pretty sure, aside from Hikaru versus Fabi, the matchup that I'm really looking forward to, as Pragnananda, he's like the little Magnus, and Alireza, he's like the little Magnus. So it's gonna be, I imagine it could be an incredible game. Gukesh versus Vedit, also very impressive stuff. And then you have the women's section. Alexandra Goryachkina will face Katerina Lachno. Anna Muzichuk will face Nurgil Salimova. Leiting J will face Tanjongi, and Vaishali will face Hampi Koneru. So it's gonna be really wild. Like I said, if you have any questions, I will answer them in the beginning of the next video that I make about the candidates tournament, and also I will talk a little bit more about where it's being played, the time format, the venue. Maybe we show some photos. Have a good time. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I realized why a lot of you were requesting it. It is a very impressive game, so there you have it. I would like to thank Joyful Chess Lover, Andreas Rosenthal, Beaster Bunny, Jeffrey Clayman, and Lucas Teokaris for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, but mostly now covering the FIDE Candidates Tournament 2024. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.